Hi everyone, this is my module 1 on action research. So first of all, what is action research? It is addressing complex issues that drive positive change, but also it's important to understand what it is, the different types, as well as the steps that would need to occur for it to be effective and drive that positive change versus just make change. So first, action research, it's a powerful tool for researchers seeking to make a difference within their community. This doesn't necessarily have to be like town community. It can be your school community, your work community, classroom, anywhere that is a group of people working towards a common goal. So driving the positive change can, like I said, be done beyond the walls of your classroom. Maybe it's building-wide, maybe it's district-wide, maybe it's a grade level. Each grade level is doing something that is going to drive the change. According to Model Teaching 2022, there are 6 steps which are going to be identifying a problem, creating your question, reviewing the literature, proposing a solution, collecting and analyzing the data, and then communicating those results. There are different types of action research. The steps that need to be taken are going to be similar for any type of research you are doing. It's important that the question is not just yes, no. The question is one that you can take data on and go back and reevaluate, and is it making positive progression, or do you need to go back in and change something? Then it goes into reviewing the literature. So this doesn't necessarily mean just like articles you read, videos you watch. Maybe it's things you talk about with colleagues. Maybe it's something you learn in professional development or PLCs, or maybe it's like a training you attend that is centered around something you are trying to change and do differently. Once you've done both of those and you have a problem, your question is formed, and you've been looking at information, then you can propose your solution. So your solution is going to be like, how do I solve this problem? What am I going to do to create change? And then honestly, it's going to be important that you look at the pros and cons of that solution. Is there a solution you have that has more pros than another one, or does your solution have more cons than anything? Once you do that, you're going to want to collect and analyze the data and then communicate those results. It's important when you collect and analyze data, use multiple points of data, whether that be surveys, feedback, test scores, or like types of assessments, maybe community or parent feedback if it's within just your classroom, and then communicate those results to your admin team or your leadership team. Maybe during a professional development, you share about something that has been going on and why it could be important for everyone else to try doing something similar. So the action research is going to be important because it's going to build knowledge for all. Now, it's not knowledge of learning how to read or reading a story and being able to tell you about the story. The knowledge is what can, educators or schools do better to help students. It's an ongoing reflective practice through data and looking at what's working, what's not, why is it working, why is it not. And then the main purpose for any type of educational research is going to be generating knowledge on topics that are imperative to students, teachers, schools, administrators, or other stakeholders. So when it says knowledge on topics that are imperative to them, maybe it has to do with the special ed curriculum, or like the things that are going on in a special education classroom and the services they are receiving. Maybe it has to do with the curriculum overall. Do teachers use the same curriculum and teach the same stories and skills, but maybe the presentation of it is a little bit differently? Or is it a free-for-all, use whatever you want, just so long as you're doing something? So when it comes to the knowledge that are imperative, do we offer things to the students of different backgrounds? How can we change that? What change needs to happen there? So that's kind of what that's talking about there. And then action research is also broken down to 3 different types of research. Artiga lists those as participatory, classroom inquiry-based, and developmental, which, as when doing any research, you need to find a research method that is beneficial to the research you are doing. If I'm doing research and I pick a method that's not the most effective type of research for the problem I'm solving or the information I want to gather, then I probably shouldn't be using that one. So same thing here. First, you need to figure out, is action research even a method I should be using? And then from there, would it be best to use participatory, classroom inquiry-based, or developmental? So how can action research be used? Teachers and leaders can use the action research to get ideas about other teaching and learning strategies. It allows teachers to collaborate and reflect as a very hands-on approach that's not so this standard, this standard, this standard. It allows them to look at it as, like a bigger picture. And then it also helps with their being encouraged to collaborate with others and figure out what do they do maybe over that topic that you're researching that works or doesn't work as well, and then why it might work for them, and then maybe you go watch them actually do it so you can try implementing it within your own classroom. Too many times I think we ask teachers to reflect upon their teaching and what they would maybe do differently, and yeah, we want to share ideas with colleagues, and we also talk about collaborating with our colleagues, but how often do we encourage teachers to go watch something another colleague does versus just talk about it? It also can improve the knowledge of ourselves, the strategies we use, our students, and our colleagues. So the action research is going to show us maybe what our strengths and weaknesses are. It's going to maybe give us new ideas for ways we can teach something instead of being, well, this is how I've always taught it. It's going to improve our knowledge on our students. Okay? Is what I'm doing hurting my students? But I'm wanting to say, well, they just don't understand this, or learning's difficult for them. Or is it the technique or the strategy or the way I am presenting information to them? And it's going to improve our knowledge on our colleagues. We know that as educators, there's so many different ways of doing things and changing things and teaching things. Maybe I, as a teacher, recognize that there's a concept such as cause and effect that's very hard for me to teach. I'm gonna find a colleague that maybe is very strong in that area, and it's gonna help me build my knowledge in teaching that area for my students. Leaders are also encouraged to putting plans into action. So we can create plans as a building to foster growth, whether it be in academics, social emotional, maybe behavioral, maybe attendance, but it comes down to how well does a leader create an action plan, support the teachers, and then reinforce said plan. So action plans are going to align with each strategic goal to determine specific actions that a district will take, who is going to be tasked with that action, when will it occur, what resources are there, and then how will the action steps be communicated. Having an action plan and creating those steps is going to come from the problem you want to address and the question you are asking when you first begin your action research. If it's just teachers maybe working on it, it might look a little bit different, but if it is something that is maybe building or district-wide, your building leader needs to be hands-on and engage with that and help support it, as well as if they have a change they want to make in the building, they put this plan into place so that everyone's on the same page. It's also important that for action research to be used, we allow time and offer work around professional development to collaborate, hear from other teachers, maybe get into classrooms and actually look at their classroom. What strategies do they use for some of the management with allowing students to collaborate with each other? But it's important that teachers feel they have the time to connect with others, as well as intentionally plan and effectively use action research. And then it can also build positive classroom and school culture. So depending what the goal is for the action research, it could help create even a better classroom community, a better school culture, maybe better trust within one another. And the idea of just because that's how you do it doesn't mean that's the only way you do it, because I've also seen that in schools as well. So there are some common problems with action research, one being what the leader perceives their roles and responsibilities to be. It could vary from elementary, middle school, and high school, just because the needs at each level are going to be a bit different. So while there are going to be different roles and responsibilities of a building leader, it's also important that if we're looking maybe at a district level, that there's some alignment across the board there. So perceptions of the school principals, maybe around development, organization, implementation, and evaluation of the curriculum, relating to their roles as a curriculum leader in a high school, middle school, and elementary school level. If there's a standard curriculum that everyone uses, but then how you portray the information is maybe a little different room to room, that's one thing. Especially when you're getting in doing observations, you can figure, you know each classroom is on this specific lesson, but the way someone across the hall is teaching it could be more effective and engaging than the counterpart. Whereas in some schools, like the school I'm in, there is no curriculum. The teachers are, you can do what you want, how you want, when you want, as long as you're meeting the state standards for Iowa by the end of the year. There's no accountability to the data teachers are keeping. The data point there is more of a screener, so it doesn't give a true testament to if what they're doing is working or not. And that comes back to, again, the perception that the leader has as their role and responsibility. There's a fine line between just, kind of keeping everything at bay and being okay with average, and being like a dictator over how things are taught. Then also another problem could be the lack of training and the workload. Teachers may not have undertaken research before, so they might need additional training into what's a good question look like? Where do you look for some of your research? What are the types of data points you might collect? And it allows them to also be supported and learn about like that data collection. Creating the action steps, they could say, well, first I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, and last I'm going to do this. But that doesn't necessarily mean they are valuable action steps that are going to reach the end goal. It might just be, here's a list of the things I'm going to do, but if it doesn't work, I don't really know what I'm going to do after that. So making sure that they've seen an example of what action steps could be, they've maybe helped in creating action steps. Accurate data collection is also going to be another one. The reflective process may lead to biased interpretations or subjective assessments if not approached with care. Encouraging them to use very different statistical tools and multiple methods, not just the same method or only one method. Maybe they use two different methods and then compare. Or they get input from other people. But if I only look at my data and I only have one data point, well, I could say, my data looks good, so this is very clearly working. But how reliable is that data point that I have? And am I putting on blinders to the strategies that I'm using to combat that problem or the research I'm doing? And then deciding on a method for problem solving. So how do they want to solve the problem? If they don't have the exposure to doing research or being encouraged to try new things and really explore, they might have a hard time creating what method they want to use, which could then lead to bouncing all over the place and then could lead to them just not effectively using the action research. So how can it improve my personal teaching? I think it can improve my data collection. I've been in both a public and a private school now where the data in the public school, they provide you a lot of different ways to keep the data, whereas the private school, they really don't care about it. And so I noticed throughout this last year, I was kind of getting away from the different types of it. So just, remaining disciplined in, well, just because I like this way of keeping data doesn't mean it's the only way. What's another one that could be more effective and also save me time? It can also improve my teaching with trying new strategies. So it said, like LinkedIn 2023 says, you should also collect data from multiple sources, perspectives such as students, peers, parents, admin, using various methods such as interviews, surveys, observations, or tests. It was easy to do that within the public school because a lot of the professional development we did was based on data, especially in like the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, whereas this last year I was at a private school and it was kindergarten. And so at kindergarten, a lot of the standards that need to be met for Iowa is a lot of like one-to-one interviewing or like assessing, kind of like a test. And so I just kind of got comfortable, what's the easiest, quickest way to constantly go back and check the data of kindergarten when a lot of it has to be one-on-one situations. It can also improve my teaching by learning more about my students and colleagues. So what are my students most receptive to for engaged learning to enhance their skills? And then what are my colleagues' strengths? Do I have an area, especially from the other kindergarten teachers since I've never done it? What were their strengths? And what could I go learn and communicate and collaborate with them to then use in my own kindergarten classroom? And then teachers have the priority to identify problems and solve them. So if I notice something within my own classroom that could be a problem, I could use the action research to focus on that problem with that given group of students, because not every class is going to be the same. So currently within my own teaching practices, using more data points instead of just 1 or 2, stronger relationships with the students and families. So while I do build positive, strong relationships with students and families on a sense of trust and communication, I could also work on that as, is there anything going on that, could change the behavior or how focused they are in school? Did they not get to sleep early enough, instead of just kind of getting into a habit of new day, same routine, new day, same routine. I can also be more intentional within my planning, I think, too, with some of the lack of expectations and standards at this current private school. I just kind of knew what I was going to do, and my coaching sometimes allows me to be able to come up with things and move on the fly. And so just really honing in on what I can do to meet the needs of different students. And then having more effective management. So while my classroom management is strong, I think if I identified an area that I could use action research for, it would allow me to do management styles maybe a little differently. So the success on student learning and teaching performance that action research is going to have is reflecting on classroom management. Someone said it was effective and all the students were active for group work by trying some new strategies when they were collaborating. So there's going to be a noisy environment, but if you notice maybe someone in the group isn't collaborating, maybe you go ask them like, hey, like what's going on, kind of thing, to get them to feel more empowered to participate. When teacher research is carefully planned and based on informed decisions, it can lead to meaningful results that can be confidently used to base future decisions about teaching and learning. So if I were to carefully research what I'm trying to do and really focus on being intentional with the planning for my decision making, I could get more meaningful results, even honestly maybe a little faster. So then making decisions moving forward are quicker. Students could be actively engaged and learning more to a higher expectation than, oh, they're considered proficient in grade level, so like it's fine, I don't have to do anything with them. It should be, even though they're proficient, we should be pushing them more. They're above grade level, great, I should keep extending their learning some more. So by the action research, that would allow me to perform better and help my students learn better. Creating more controlled environments with hands-on support and then more quality instruction. So critiquing it right now, the time management, lack of learning, feeling like I already do this, they make growth, why change, is the research good quality? These are all thoughts and misgivings I might have about like why I don't do action research, when really sometimes I just get in the habit of like, oh, well, what I've done has worked, so that's just gonna be that. But the truth is, education and students are always changing, so therefore as a teacher, I need to be intentional about my work and making sure I'm growing and changing. My school has limited PD, limited training, observations are done, but not much are done with them. No school improvement plan, private school, so different expectations. People can do what they've done because they've always done it. They can use whatever materials they want, even if they're not scientifically backed, and data within their classroom show that they aren't getting improvements. No research is done. The performance and student outcomes tend to decrease without it. There's limited support with the training, and then honestly, some of that goes back to the perception of our building leader. We don't have students that cause a lot of behavior going on. The teachers show up and they do their job, but that our leader doesn't really push everyone to go beyond that. So within my school, the time for planning is available, but no one knows what the action research is, and they don't really want to change. If they have time to plan, they oftentimes just get their things and leave early for the day. There's no standard for staying and doing work. And then honestly, our building does have positive culture with a lot of collaborations. But speaking in general, we do not push people to being higher standards, even though that the action research can support that, as well as the collaboration and encouraging teachers to try new things for student learning. So while research does support those, my school doesn't necessarily do those. This is relevant to my learning because I didn't really know the difference between reflective practitioner and action research. It can help me become more effective. I understand why it is important to be intentional with action research. It shows me as a future leader that I do have a role in if teachers use action research, and it works to improve the school. It's also relevant to my current learning because it can build positive environments, provide the trainings, adequate planning and collaboration time, and then what my role as a leader will be someday in the future. It'll influence decisions I make because I can use this to support their learning with professional development. We could do this as something basic within school levels so they can see how it would work, instead of just, oh, here's a tool and a strategy you can use, now go for it. Intentional with collaboration with my leadership team for maybe school improvement plans, and then it can help me incorporate different questions about the data, strategies, what goes into planning during the observations and feedback meetings with teachers, and then what it can help me with what are my goals as a leader and what do I want from my teachers, my students, my schools, my families. And that is the end of my presentation.